They say love is tested in hardship, but sometimes hardship doesn't just reveal a partner's true nature. It reveals their intentions. The wheels of Olivia's wheelchair left tracks in the soft dirt as her husband Marcus pushed her deeper into the forest. The evening shadows grew longer, and Olivia's unease deepened with every yard. "Where exactly are we going, Marcus?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. His reply came cold and detached. "Somewhere. You won't be a burden anymore." From the shadows of the trees, unseen eyes watched them, and what happened next would change everything. Olivia Bennett had once been the picture of success at 34. She ran her own interior design firm in Portland, had married her college sweetheart Marcus, and lived in a beautifully restored craftsman home in the suburbs. Their Instagram-perfect life was the envy of friends and family alike. Their love story had begun 14 years earlier at the University of Oregon, where Olivia was studying design and Marcus was pursuing his business degree. They met at a campus coffee shop when Olivia spilled her latte on Marcus's economics textbook. What started as an embarrassed apology turned into a 4-hour conversation, and by the end of the week, they were inseparable. But there was another significant person in Olivia's college life. Caleb Jensen, her former boyfriend. Caleb had been different from Marcus in every way. Intense, principled, and with a quiet strength that came from a difficult childhood. He was studying on a military scholarship, planning to join the Special Forces after graduation. Caleb and Olivia had a deep connection, but they wanted different things. He was committed to military service, potentially deploying to dangerous locations. Olivia wanted stability, to build a design business in one place. Breaking up with him was one of the hardest things Olivia would ever do. Until the accident. The accident Olivia referred to happened 3 years into her marriage with Marcus. She was driving home from a client meeting during a thunderstorm when another car swerved into her lane. The resulting crash left her with a severed spinal cord and permanent paralysis from the waist down. The medical bills piled up quickly, even with insurance. Olivia's design business suffered as she spent months in rehabilitation, learning to navigate life in a wheelchair. Marcus initially played the part of the devoted husband, telling everyone how brave his wife was, how they would get through this together. But behind closed doors, a different reality was emerging. Sighs of frustration when he had to help her transfer from the wheelchair to the bed. Complaints about how her medical expenses were affecting their lifestyle. Comments about how their house wasn't designed for this situation. 6 months after the accident, Marcus convinced Olivia to sign over control of her business to him temporarily, while she focused on recovery. Soon after, he hired a young assistant named Brooke Simmons. Beautiful, able-bodied, and increasingly present in their home. Olivia wasn't stupid. She could see the way they looked at each other. She could feel herself becoming an inconvenience in her own marriage. There were moments when their eyes met across the room, and Olivia felt like a ghost in her own home, a silent presence neither seen nor wanted. But she was still recovering, still adjusting to life in a wheelchair. As Marcus took more control over Olivia's business and finances, he simultaneously withdrew from their marriage. Date nights stopped. Intimacy vanished. He began staying late at the office. Sometimes he wouldn't come home until after midnight, offering vague excuses that smelled of cheap cologne and lies. Olivia's friends, many of whom had found her disability awkward to navigate, gradually stopped visiting. Texts were left unanswered. Invitations dried up. Even those who had once sworn they'd always be there began to fade into the background, leaving her in a social vacuum she hadn't seen coming. Her world shrank to the walls of their house, which felt less like a home with each passing day. Through all of this, Olivia never suspected just how far Marcus would go to remove her from his life. She believed that, despite everything, some remnant of love remained, a belief that would be shattered on a cool autumn evening, 14 months after her accident. The day had begun like any other. Marcus left for work early. Olivia wheeled herself around their increasingly lonely house, trying to focus on a small freelance design project she'd managed to secure without Marcus's knowledge. Each click of the mouse echoed in the silence, like a reminder that she no longer belonged in the bustling design world she once led. But finishing that project gave her something Marcus hadn't in months. Purpose. A text from Marcus in the late afternoon surprised her. "I'm taking you somewhere special tonight. Be ready at 7. Dress warmly." After months of emotional neglect, this unexpected gesture kindled a flicker of hope in Olivia's heart. Perhaps he was finally accepting their new reality. Perhaps he wanted to reconnect. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a piece of the man she married beneath the cold facade. When Marcus returned home, he seemed oddly energetic, helping Olivia into a warm sweater and jacket with an efficiency that felt clinical rather than caring. As he loaded her wheelchair into their SUV, Olivia noticed a suitcase in the back. "Are we going somewhere overnight?" she asked. "Just be patient," Marcus replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's a surprise." As they drove out of the city and into more rural areas, Olivia's initial excitement gave way to confusion, then unease, when Marcus turned onto a narrow Forest Service road. Alarm bells began ringing in her mind. "Marcus, where are we going? There's nothing out here." His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Can't you just trust me for once, without all the questions?" The chill in his voice was sharper than the cold air seeping through the windows. The harshness in his voice silenced her, and they continued driving in intense quiet, deeper into the Oregon woodland as darkness fell. What Olivia couldn't know was that they were being followed. A black pickup truck maintained a discreet distance behind them, its driver's face hidden in shadow, his eyes never losing sight of Marcus's SUV. This mysterious follower was Caleb Jensen, Olivia's college boyfriend, now a decorated veteran who had recently returned to civilian life after 3 tours of duty. Caleb had been trying to reconnect with old friends, including Olivia, only to discover through social media comments about her accident and the strange absence of recent photos or updates about her life. Concerned, he had decided to drive by her house that evening, only to see her being helped into Marcus's SUV, looking confused and vulnerable. Something about Marcus's body language, the furtive way he'd loaded her wheelchair, had triggered Caleb's finely tuned instincts. Without a clear plan, he had decided to follow them, maintaining a careful distance on the increasingly remote roads. Back in the SUV, Olivia's heart raced as Marcus finally pulled to a stop in a small clearing. The headlights illuminated nothing but trees stretching in every direction. "Marcus, you're scaring me. What are we doing here?" He turned off the engine and sat in silence for a long moment before responding. "You know, Olivia, I've tried, I really have, but this isn't the life I signed up for." His words dropped like stones in her stomach, calm, almost casual, but ice-cold in their finality. Cold fear washed over her as he continued. "The business is struggling because of your medical bills. We're drowning in debt. I can't keep living like this." "What are you saying?" Olivia whispered, though deep down she already knew. Marcus got out of the car, walked around to her side, and opened the door. The night air was cold against her face as he roughly pulled her wheelchair from the back and unfolded it. "I'm saying goodbye, Olivia." With clinical efficiency, he transferred her from the car to the wheelchair, setting her purse in her lap. His hands moved with the precision of someone carrying out a task, not a decision born of emotion, but of cold, calculated finality. Olivia's hands trembled as she realized the full horror of what was happening. "You can't leave me here. I'll die out here alone." Marcus's face hardened. "You have your phone. Maybe someone will find you, or maybe they won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore." He reached into the car and pulled out a small duffel bag, dropping it beside her wheelchair. "There's some water, a blanket, and a flashlight. That's more than you deserve after what you've put me through." The cruelty in his tone was sharper than the wind cutting through the trees. Olivia's voice broke as tears streamed down her face. "Marcus, please, we can work through this. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it." For a moment, something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Perhaps regret, perhaps doubt, but then his phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at the screen, and his expression hardened once more. "Brooke is waiting for me. We're starting over. Without you." His final words hit harder than the cold. With them, the last remnants of their marriage shattered irreparably. As the full reality of her situation crashed over her, Olivia's pleas turned to screams. But they fell on deaf ears as Marcus got back into the SUV, backed up, and drove away, leaving her alone in the clearing, the red glow of his taillights disappearing through the trees. Or so he thought. From his hidden position, Caleb watched in stunned disbelief as the scene unfolded. Years of military training had prepared him for many things, but nothing could have prepared him for witnessing the woman he once loved being abandoned in a remote forest because of her disability. His fists clenched at his sides, nails digging into his palms as he fought the instinct to rush out too soon. Every second burned into his memory, the cruelty, the indifference. As Marcus's SUV disappeared down the road, Caleb sat frozen, processing what he had just seen. Then, hearing Olivia's heartbreaking sobs echoing through the trees, he made his decision. He would not let her die here. Not tonight. Not ever. Olivia Bennett sat alone in her wheelchair. The forest around her was pitch black beyond the feeble circle of light from her phone's flashlight. Her hands shook as she tried to call 911, only to see no service mocking her from the screen. "This can't be happening," she whispered to herself, her breath visible in the cold air. "He wouldn't really leave me here to die." But the empty forest gave no answer, and the cruel truth settled in her heart. Her husband had indeed abandoned her, choosing to start a new life with his assistant, rather than honor his vows to stay by Olivia's side in sickness and in health. Desperation fueled her as she attempted to wheel herself toward where she thought the road might be. But the forest floor was uneven, covered with fallen leaves and branches. The wheelchair caught on a root, nearly tipping her over. Olivia let out a frustrated cry that echoed through the trees. "Is anyone there?" she called out, knowing how unlikely it was that anyone would hear her. "Please help me." The forest seemed to swallow her words, returning nothing but the distant hoot of an owl and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Time stretched as her panic grew. The temperature was dropping, and in her hurried departure, Marcus hadn't given her a chance to grab her medication. By morning, the pain would be unbearable. Just as hopelessness threatened to overwhelm her, Olivia heard a twig snap somewhere in the darkness beyond her flashlight's reach. Her head jerked up. "Hello? Is someone there?" Silence. Then, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching slowly through the underbrush. Olivia's heart raced. Was it Marcus returning, having had a change of heart? Or was it something else entirely, someone or something that posed an even greater danger? "Who's there?" Her voice trembled as she aimed her phone's flashlight toward the sound. The beam caught a tall figure emerging from between the trees. A man, broad-shouldered and solid, his face partly shadowed by the hood of his jacket. Olivia's breath caught in her throat as fear and relief battled within her. The figure stepped closer, and as he moved into the full light, the hood fell back to reveal a face that sent a shock of recognition through Olivia's body. "Caleb," she gasped, hardly believing her eyes. Caleb Jensen stood before her, older than when she'd last seen him, his face more weathered, his eyes carrying a weight they hadn't before. But it was unmistakably him, her college boyfriend, the man she'd once thought she might spend her life with before their paths diverged. Olivia. His voice was deeper than she remembered, steady and calm despite the bizarre circumstances. "Are you hurt?" For a moment she couldn't speak. The sheer improbability of his presence rendered her speechless. Then reality crashed back, and the dam broke. Tears streamed down her face as the words tumbled out. "Marcus, he left me here. He's not coming back. He's with someone else now. He wanted me to die out here." Her voice broke on the last words. Caleb knelt beside her wheelchair, his expression grave but controlled. Up close, Olivia could see the changes in him. A thin scar along his jawline that hadn't been there before, eyes that had seen things she couldn't imagine. "I know," he said quietly. "I saw what happened." Olivia's tears paused in confusion. "You saw?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "I was following your car. I had a bad feeling when I saw him loading you into the SUV earlier," Caleb said. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I've been back in Portland for a few weeks. I wanted to look you up, see how you were doing. Then I heard about your accident and how isolated you'd become. Something didn't feel right." "You were watching our house?" Olivia asked. Under different circumstances, this might have sounded alarming, but at this moment she could only feel gratitude that someone had cared enough to check on her. "I just drove by today. Call it a soldier's instinct, but the way he was acting, I couldn't just drive away. Caleb stood up and surveyed the dark forest around them. We need to get you somewhere warm. My truck is parked about half a mile back. Olivia gestured helplessly at her wheelchair and the uneven forest floor. I can't exactly hike out of here. Caleb nodded, his expression softening slightly. I know. I'm going to carry you. Before Olivia could protest, Caleb had moved behind her wheelchair and was carefully placing a thick blanket from his backpack around her shoulders. I'm too heavy, Olivia objected, embarrassment coloring her voice. And what about my wheelchair? The chair will have to stay for now. I'll come back for it once you're safe. With gentle efficiency, Caleb slipped one arm under her knees and the other behind her back. And you're not too heavy. I've carried wounded men twice your size through terrain worse than this. As he lifted her from the wheelchair, Olivia was struck by the surreal nature of the situation. Her husband had abandoned her to die. And now, her college boyfriend, whom she hadn't seen in nearly a decade, was carrying her to safety through a dark forest. How did you find me? She asked as Caleb navigated carefully through the trees, his movement steady despite the extra weight. How did you know where Marcus was taking me? I kept a safe distance behind your SUV. When he turned onto the Forest Service road, I knew something was wrong. I parked and followed on foot once you got deep enough in. He paused, adjusting his grip slightly. I was about to intervene when he left you, but I wanted to make sure he was actually leaving first. Olivia's mind raced with questions. Why are you even in Oregon? Last I heard, you were deployed overseas. Caleb's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. 3 tours of duty. I got out 6 months ago, came back to the States, did some private security work for a while, then decided to come back to Portland to settle some unfinished business. Something in his tone made Olivia wonder what kind of unfinished business would bring him back after all these years. But she was too exhausted, too overwhelmed by the night's events to press further. They continued in silence for a time, the only sounds their breathing and Caleb's careful footsteps on the forest floor. Finally, they emerged onto a narrow dirt road where a black pickup truck was parked, its outline barely visible in the darkness. Almost there, Caleb said, his breath slightly labored. Now, from the exertion, Caleb managed to open the passenger door one-handed and gently placed Olivia on the seat, making sure the blanket was still secure around her. Thank you, Olivia whispered, the full impact of what might have happened without his intervention beginning to hit her. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there. Caleb's expression was unreadable as he closed her door and walked around to the driver's side. Let's get you somewhere safe. Then we can figure out what to do next. As the truck's engine rumbled to life and the headlights illuminated the narrow forest road, Olivia found herself wondering what next could possibly look like. Her husband had just tried to murder her by abandonment. She had no wheelchair, no medication, and was now in the company of an ex-boyfriend who had apparently been watching her house and following her car. Under any other circumstances, she might have been terrified. But as she glanced at Caleb's stoic profile, illuminated intermittently by the dashboard lights, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Safe. The truck bounced along the rough road, heading deeper into the forest rather than back toward the city. Where are we going? Olivia asked, suddenly realizing she had no idea where Caleb was taking her. I have a cabin about 20 minutes from here, he replied, eyes fixed on the difficult road ahead. It's isolated, but it has everything we need: heat, running water, first aid supplies. You have a cabin in these woods? Olivia couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. Caleb nodded. Bought it when I got back from my last tour. Needed somewhere quiet, away from people. A pause, somewhere to heal. The word hung between them, laden with unspoken meaning. Olivia studied his profile more carefully, noting the tension in his jaw, the careful control in his movements that suggested he was a man accustomed to containing something powerful within himself. Caleb, what happened to you after we broke up? For a long moment, he was silent, and Olivia thought he might not answer. Then he spoke, his voice measured. I did what I planned to do, joined special forces, saw action in places I'm still not allowed to talk about, did things I wish I could forget. He took a deep breath. Then about a year ago, an operation went bad, lost some good men, Got injured. Pretty badly myself. He briefly touched his side, a gesture so quick Olivia almost missed it. They patched me up, gave me some medals, then decided I'd done enough. Honorable discharge. Sent me home to figure out what happens next. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Turns out that's harder than it sounds. Olivia absorbed this information, hearing both what he said and what remained unspoken. The boy she'd known in college, idealistic and determined, had become a man shaped by combat and loss. Yet here he was, still stepping in to help someone in need, still putting himself at risk for others. There was a gravity to him now, as if every step, every word carried the weight of lives once saved or lost. "I'm sorry," she said softly, not sure if she was apologizing for asking or for the hardships he'd endured. Caleb's expression softened slightly. "Don't be. We all make our choices." He glanced at her briefly, like Marcus made his tonight. The mention of her husband's name brought reality crashing back. Olivia's hands began to shake as the enormity of what had happened threatened to overwhelm her. "He tried to kill me," she whispered, the words sounding unreal even as she spoke them. "My husband brought me to the middle of nowhere and left me to die. Because I'm disabled, because I became inconvenient." The bitterness in her voice barely masked the grief beneath. She hadn't just lost a marriage, she'd lost the illusion that she had ever truly been loved. Caleb's voice was gentle but firm. "Yes, he did, and he needs to be held accountable for that." "How?" Olivia asked, despair coloring her voice. "It's my word against his. He'll say I asked to go for a drive, that we had an argument and I told him to leave me alone for a while, that he came back and I was gone." She laughed bitterly. Who would believe that a successful businessman would abandon his disabled wife in the woods? "I would," Caleb said simply. "I saw it happen, and I imagine there's more to the story, things that happened before tonight, that show a pattern." Olivia was quiet, thinking about the months of emotional abuse, the isolation, the gradual takeover of her finances and business, the subtle erasures of her autonomy. The way Marcus rewrote her reality until she questioned her own judgment. "There is," she admitted, "but I'm not sure it's enough." Caleb turned the truck onto an even narrower path, barely visible among the trees. "Let's focus on getting you safe and comfortable tonight. Tomorrow we can start figuring out how to make him pay for what he's done." The word pay hung in the air, carrying an edge that made Olivia glance sharply at Caleb. There was something in his tone, a controlled anger, a precision to his words, that reminded her this was a man trained to eliminate threats, a man who had faced monsters in human skin before and might not hesitate to become one himself if it meant protecting someone he cared about. "Caleb," she said carefully, "whatever we do, it has to be legal. I don't want revenge that puts either of us in jail." The truck slowed as they approached a small clearing. In the headlights, Olivia could make out a rustic cabin built of dark wood with a stone chimney. It looked solid and well-maintained, if deliberately isolated from the world. Caleb put the truck in park and turned to face her fully for the first time since he'd rescued her. "I promise you, Olivia, Marcus will face justice for what he's done. Legal justice." His eyes, however, held a determination that suggested he had very specific ideas about what that justice might entail. As Caleb carried her into the cabin and got her settled on a comfortable couch near a wood stove, Olivia was struck by the strange twist her life had taken in just a few hours. That morning, she had been a trapped, diminished version of herself, enduring a loveless marriage. Now, she was in a forest cabin with a man from her past, a man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and stepped in without hesitation, a man who she was beginning to suspect had never fully let her go. The cabin was surprisingly comfortable inside, clean, well-organized, with a functional, if sparse, aesthetic. Military precision was evident in the way everything had its place. Caleb efficiently built a fire in the wood stove, the warmth quickly spreading through the main room. "Are you hungry?" he asked, moving to a small kitchenette. "I don't have much, but I can make soup, sandwiches." Olivia nodded, suddenly aware of the hollow feeling in her stomach. "Whatever's easiest." As Caleb moved around the kitchen, Olivia took the opportunity to really look at him. He was broader than she remembered, more solid. His movements, economical and purposeful. The boy she had dated in college had been replaced by a man who carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced true danger and survived. "So," she said, trying to process the bizarre turn her life had taken, "you bought a cabin in the same forest where my husband decided to abandon me. That's quite a coincidence." Caleb glanced over his shoulder as he stirred something on the small stove. "It is, though these woods cover hundreds of acres, so the odds of him choosing a spot near my cabin were actually pretty slim." He paused. "I chose this area because it's quiet, private, good for someone who needs to readjust to civilian life. And you just happened to drive by my house today?" After all these years, Caleb was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider his words carefully. "I've been back in Portland for 2 months, been doing some consulting work, trying to figure out my next steps." He turned to face her. "About 3 weeks ago, I looked you up online, found out about your accident, saw that you were married. I was going to reach out, maybe get coffee, catch up." "But," Olivia prompted, sensing there was more. "But when I checked your social media, something felt off. No recent posts from you. Just Marcus, occasionally posting about what a trooper you were." His expression darkened. "I've seen how people can use social media to create a narrative that hides what's really happening. And knowing what you were like in college, independent, vibrant, it didn't add up that you'd just disappear online." He returned to the stove, pouring soup into bowls. "So, yes, I drove by your house a couple times. Saw Marcus coming and going. Never saw you outside." He shook his head. "Today was the first time I saw you, and something about the way he was handling you." He trailed off. "Military training makes you sensitive to certain things. Body language, signs of coercion. I trust my instincts." "And your instincts told you to follow us into the forest," Olivia said quietly. Caleb nodded as he set a bowl of soup on the coffee table in front of her, along with a spoon and some crackers. "My instincts told me something was wrong. Following was a judgment call." He met her eyes directly. "One I'm glad I made." Olivia couldn't argue with that. She picked up the soup bowl, breathing in the warm, comforting smell. "Thank you for following us, for being here." Caleb sat in an armchair across from her, his own bowl in hand. "You don't need to thank me for basic human decency, Olivia." They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, the crackling of the fire and the occasional clink of spoons the only sounds. Olivia's mind was racing, trying to process everything that had happened and what might come next. "Marcus will report me missing," she said finally. "Once he realizes someone might have seen him in the forest, he'll spin some story about how I disappeared." Caleb nodded thoughtfully. "Probably. Which means we need to be strategic about our next steps." "I need to go to the police," Olivia said. "Tell them what happened." "We will," Caleb agreed. "But first, we need to gather evidence. Your word against his might not be enough, especially if he's already creating a false narrative." Olivia felt a flash of frustration. What kind of evidence can we possibly get? It happened in the middle of nowhere, in the dark. Caleb set his empty bowl aside and leaned forward. "You'd be surprised what can be used as evidence. Text messages, financial records showing his control over your accounts, witnesses who might have seen his behavior change after your accident." He paused. "And my testimony about what I saw tonight. Would that be enough? Maybe, maybe not. But before we go to the police, we should try to gather as much as possible." Caleb's expression was thoughtful. "Do you have access to your bank accounts, your emails, financial records?" Olivia shook her head. "Marcus changed all my passwords after the accident, said it was to protect me while I recovered." She laughed bitterly. "I realize now he was isolating me, taking control bit by bit. That's financial abuse, and it's actually helpful for building a case," Caleb said. "Do you remember any of your old passwords or have any accounts he might not know about?" Olivia thought carefully. "I have an old email account from college that I'm pretty sure still works. And my parents left me some money in a separate account Marcus might not know about. I never touched it because we didn't need it." Caleb nodded approvingly. "That's good. Tomorrow we can start looking into those, see what kind of paper trail Marcus has left." He hesitated. "Olivia, I need to ask, do you want to punish Marcus, or do you just want to be free of him?" The question caught her off guard. I don't know. Both, I think. I want him to face consequences for what he did. But mostly, I want my life back, my independence. Then that's what we'll focus on, Caleb said firmly. Getting you free safely, with the resources you need to rebuild. Olivia was struck by his clarity, his focus on practical steps forward. Rather than dwelling on the horror of what had happened, this was exactly what Olivia needed at this moment. Not pity, but partnership. A focus on finding a solution. Thank you, she said again, feeling tears threatening to rise. I still can't believe you found me, that you were there when I needed someone most. Caleb's expression softened. Maybe it wasn't just coincidence. Maybe it was unfinished business. The phrase he'd used earlier hung between them, weighted with history and unspoken feelings. Olivia remembered their college breakup. Painful, but necessary. They had both believed at the time. She'd wanted stability, a predictable future. He'd been drawn to danger, to serving a cause greater than himself. Caleb, she said carefully, why did you really come looking for me? After all these years. He was quiet for a long moment, the firelight playing across his features, highlighting the new lines around his eyes, the slight gray at his temples that hadn't been there in college. When you're in combat, he finally said, you learn to focus on the mission, on staying alive. You don't have time to think about regrets or what-ifs. He stared into the fire. But when it's quiet, when the mission is over, those thoughts come back. And one of mine was always you. Olivia felt her heart quicken. Me? Caleb nodded slowly. I respected our decision to break up. We wanted different things. But after everything I've seen and done, I started wondering what my life might have been like if I'd made different choices. His eyes met hers. If we had made different choices. The weight of those words settled between them, a bridge spanning the years and experiences that had shaped them into different people than they once were. I'm not the same person I was in college, Olivia said softly. Even before the accident and after. Everything changes when your body betrays you. I'm not the same either, Caleb responded. War changes you. Seeing death up close changes you. He leaned forward. But some things don't change, Olivia. Like how I feel when I look at you. Even now, even after everything. Olivia felt a complex mix of emotions, surprise, warmth, confusion. Her life had been upended in a matter of hours, and here was Caleb, a ghost from her past, speaking words that stirred something she'd thought long buried. I can't think about that right now, she said honestly. Everything is too raw, too confusing. Caleb nodded immediately. Of course, that was inappropriate timing on my part. He stood up, taking their empty bowls. You need rest, not complications. As he moved toward the kitchen, Olivia caught his wrist gently. I didn't say it was unwelcome, she said. Just not now, not yet. Their eyes held for a moment, an understanding passing between them. Then Caleb nodded and continued to the kitchen. The bedroom is through that door, Caleb said, gesturing to a door off the main room. I changed the sheets this morning, so they're clean. I'll take the couch. Olivia frowned. Caleb, this is your home. I can't take your bed. You can, and you will, he said firmly. You've been through hell today. You need proper rest. His tone softened. Please, Olivia, let me do this for you. Too exhausted to argue further, Olivia nodded. Do you have a t-shirt I could borrow to sleep in? Caleb disappeared into the bedroom and returned with a soft gray t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants. These will be too big, but they're clean. Thank you. Olivia took the clothes, then hesitated. I'll need help getting to the bathroom, changing. A flash of understanding crossed Caleb's face. Of course, just tell me what you need. With patient dignity, Caleb helped Olivia to the bathroom, waited outside while she used the facilities, then helped her change into the borrowed clothes. His hands were steady, his voice low and calm, offering quiet reassurances when her movements slowed or trembled. There was no awkwardness, only respect and a quiet focus that made her feel human again, not fragile. It was a striking contrast to Marcus's increasingly impatient assistance over the past year. Where Marcus had sighed, rushed, or avoided eye contact, Caleb listened, paused, and adjusted to her pace without complaint. Once Olivia was settled in the comfortable bed, Caleb lingered in the doorway. If you need anything in the night, water, medication, help getting to the bathroom, just call out. I'm a light sleeper. Olivia nodded, already feeling sleep tugging at her. Caleb? Yes? Why do you have a cabin that's accessible for someone with mobility issues? She'd noticed the wider doorways, the grab bars in the bathroom, features that made Caleb's cabin surprisingly navigable for someone in her condition. A shadow crossed his face. "I told you I was injured on my last tour," he paused. "The doctors weren't sure if I'd walk again. I had the cabin modified while I was still in rehab, preparing for all possibilities." There was a heaviness in his voice, unspoken memories and a kind of quiet empathy that didn't need explanation. Olivia processed this new information. "But you recovered." "I was lucky," Caleb said simply. "Others weren't." He stepped back from the doorway. "Get some rest, Olivia. Tomorrow we start figuring out how to get your life back." As the door closed softly behind him, Olivia lay in the darkness, her mind replaying the extraordinary events of the day. Her husband had abandoned her to die. Her college boyfriend had saved her life. And somehow, improbably, she felt safer than she had in months. With that strange comfort surrounding her, Olivia drifted into an exhausted sleep, unaware that the battle for her future was just beginning. Olivia woke disoriented, sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment, panic seized her. Where was she? Then the events of the previous night came rushing back. Marcus abandoning her in the forest. Caleb appearing like some guardian angel from her past, bringing her to his cabin. The smell of coffee drifted through the door, along with the sound of quiet movement. Olivia pushed herself up against the headboard, wincing at the stiffness in her body. Without her regular medication regimen, the chronic pain that accompanied her paralysis was making itself known. "Caleb," she called out, her voice rough with sleep. The door opened almost immediately. Caleb stood there, already dressed in jeans and a Henley, a mug of coffee in his hand. "Morning," he said. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was abandoned in a forest and slept in strange clothes," Olivia replied, managing a small smile despite everything. "But alive, which is more than Marcus planned for." Caleb's expression darkened momentarily at the mention of Marcus, but he quickly schooled his features. "I made coffee, and I found some painkillers in the bathroom cabinet. Not prescription strength, but they might help." "Thank you," Olivia said, genuinely touched by his thoughtfulness. "I hate to ask, but I need help getting to the bathroom." Without hesitation or awkwardness, Caleb helped her to the bathroom, then to the couch in the main room, where he had already arranged pillows for her comfort. The domesticity of the scene, coffee waiting on the table, a fire crackling in the wood stove, felt strangely intimate, given the circumstances. "I went back for your wheelchair while you were sleeping," Caleb said, handing her a mug of coffee. "It's on the porch, needs cleaning, but it's intact." Olivia felt a surge of gratitude. "You didn't have to do that." "You need it," he replied simply, "and I figured you might want these too." He placed her purse beside her on the couch. "My purse? Did you go back to where?" Caleb nodded. "First Light. Wanted to make sure I hadn't missed anything that could help us." Olivia opened her purse with trembling hands. Everything was there. Her phone, wallet, the emergency medication she kept for breakthrough pain. "Caleb, thank you. I can't even." "You don't need to thank me," he cut in gently. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Olivia said firmly. "They wouldn't. Most people would have called 911 and kept driving. You followed your instincts. You carried me through a dark forest. You're giving me shelter." She met his eyes directly. "You saved my life." Caleb seemed uncomfortable with her gratitude, shifting slightly where he stood. "Let's focus on what happens next. Have you checked your phone? Any messages from Marcus?" Olivia reached for her phone, bracing herself. "It died last night in the forest. Let me plug it in." Caleb found a charger compatible with her phone, and they waited in tense silence as it powered back on. When it finally did, a cascade of notifications appeared. 10 missed calls from Marcus, 5 voicemails, 15 text messages. "He's been busy," Caleb observed, his voice carefully neutral. "Neutral?" Olivia's hand shook as she opened the first text message, time-stamped from shortly after he had abandoned her. "Olivia, I'm sorry it came to this, but you have to understand the strain your condition has put on our marriage. Brooke makes me happy in ways you no longer can. I hope someday you'll forgive me." "Bastard," Caleb muttered, reading over her shoulder. He's already crafting his narrative. The next several messages followed a similar theme. Justifications, half apologies that placed the blame on Olivia and her disability. Then around midnight, the tone changed. "Olivia, where are you? I came back to the clearing and you were gone. This isn't funny. And then growing increasingly frantic. Who helped you? Someone must have helped you. Where are you? I'm calling the police if you don't answer me. Please, Olivia, whatever you're planning, we can talk about this. Don't ruin both our lives. The final message sent just an hour ago. I've reported you missing. The police are looking for you. I told them you were depressed, that you might harm yourself. Come home, Olivia, before this gets worse. Olivia felt physically ill reading the messages. He's trying to make it sound like I disappeared voluntarily, like I'm mentally unstable. Caleb's face had hardened into a mask of controlled fury. He's covering his tracks, making sure that if you do show up and accuse him, he's already planted seeds of doubt about your mental state. You reported me missing, Olivia whispered. The police are looking for me. Let them look, Caleb said firmly. We need time to gather evidence before you reappear. If you go back now, with just your word against his, he'll spin it as a confused, depressed woman who wandered off. Olivia knew he was right, but the thought of being considered a missing person, of police resources being used to search for her, made her deeply uncomfortable. What about the voicemails? Caleb prompted. Olivia played the first one on speaker. Marcus's voice filled the cabin, tearful and seemingly desperate. Olivia, baby, please call me back. I know we've had problems, but disappearing isn't the answer. I'm worried sick. Please, just let me know you're safe. Oscar-worthy performance, Caleb commented dryly. The remaining voicemails followed the same pattern. Marcus playing the role of concerned husband, increasingly frantic about his missing wife, subtly weaving in mentions of her fragile emotional state and difficulty accepting her new limitations. He's good, Olivia said numbly. Really good. Anyone hearing these would think he's genuinely worried about his mentally unstable wife. Caleb sat beside her on the couch, his expression grave. Olivia, I need to ask you something important. When you go back, and eventually you will have to, what do you want to happen? Olivia considered the question carefully. I want my freedom. I want control of my finances back. I want a divorce. She paused, then added with quiet intensity, and I want him to face consequences for what he did to me. Caleb nodded. Then we need to be strategic. If you simply return and tell your story, it becomes a he said, she said situation. He's already establishing his version of events. So what do we do? Olivia asked. We gather evidence, Caleb said. Build a case that's so strong the police have to take action. He hesitated. And we might need help. What kind of help? Professional help. Caleb reached for his own phone. I know someone, a former military colleague who works in private investigation now. He specializes in domestic abuse cases. He can help us document everything properly, maybe even get access to financial records you can't reach. Olivia felt a flicker of hope. You do that? Get someone else involved. For me? Caleb's expression softened. Olivia, I'd do a lot more than that to make sure you're safe, and that Marcus faces justice. He paused. But first, let's try to access whatever accounts you still can. You mentioned an old email account? For the next hour, they worked methodically. Olivia managed to log into her old college email account, which led to recovering access to a cloud storage account where she'd once backed up important documents. Most were outdated, but they found copies of her original business paperwork, some financial statements from before her accident, and emails from clients that proved she had been the true owner and creative force behind her design business. This is good, Caleb said, reviewing the documents. It establishes a baseline, shows that you were competent and successful before the accident, that the business was unquestionably yours. Olivia nodded, then winced as pain shot through her back. The over-the-counter painkillers were wearing off, and her body was protesting, the trauma of the previous night and the lack of her prescription medication taking a toll. Caleb noticed immediately. You're in pain. What do you need? My regular meds are at home, Olivia said. I have an emergency dose in my purse, but after that... Caleb made a quick decision. Take what you have now. My friend Jack, the investigator I mentioned, he can pick up some supplies when he comes. I'll call him. Caleb stepped outside to make the call, giving Olivia privacy as she took her medication. Through the window, she could see him pacing as he talked, his free hand gesturing occasionally, his posture rigid. Whatever he was saying, he was intense about it. When he returned, his expression was resolute. Jack will be here by early afternoon. He's bringing some equipment and supplies, including a wheelchair-accessible vehicle, so we can move you if necessary. He hesitated. He's also bringing a legal contact, someone who specializes in both disability rights and domestic abuse cases. Olivia felt overwhelmed by the speed at which things were moving. Caleb, this is a lot. I can't afford to pay private investigators and lawyers right now, not with Marcus controlling all our accounts. Caleb's gaze was steady. Don't worry about that. Jack owes me his life, literally, and he has connections who work pro bono for cases like yours. He sat beside her again. Olivia, what Marcus did to you? It's not just about you. Men like that don't stop. They just get better at hiding it. Helping you isn't just about our past. It's about making sure he can't do this to anyone else. The conviction in his voice stirred something in Olivia, a sense that perhaps her nightmare could serve a greater purpose, that her suffering might prevent someone else's. Okay, she agreed. What do we do until Jack arrives? We need to document everything while it's fresh, Caleb replied. Start from the beginning. When did things change after your accident? When did Marcus start taking control? Every detail you can remember could be important. Olivia took a deep breath and began to talk. She described how supportive Marcus had seemed immediately after the accident, how he'd handled everything while she was in the hospital. Then the subtle shift, suggestions that became commands, help that became control, love that became obligation. He changed my phone password first, she recalled. Said it was to help me because my fingers weren't as dexterous after the hospitalization. Then my email, for the same reason. Then my banking apps. Caleb typed notes as she spoke, occasionally asking clarifying questions. His approach was methodical, almost clinical, which helped Olivia maintain her composure as she detailed the systematic dismantling of her independence. He isolated me from my friends too, she continued. Always had a reason why they couldn't visit or why I couldn't go out. Too tired, too much stress, not accessible enough. Eventually, people stopped calling. What about family? Caleb asked. Olivia's expression clouded. My parents died 3 years ago. Car accident. I have a brother in Seattle, but we've never been close. Marcus discouraged me from burdening him with my problems. And when did Brooke enter the picture? About 6 months after my accident. Marcus hired her as an assistant for my business, but she quickly became more like his assistant. Always at the house, always hovering around him. Olivia's voice hardened. I knew something was happening between them. The way they looked at each other. The inside jokes. I confronted Marcus once, and he made me feel crazy for suggesting it. Said my disability was making me paranoid and insecure. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice neutral. Classic gaslighting, making you doubt your own perceptions. It worked, Olivia admitted. I started thinking maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was just jealous because she could walk, dance, be normal. There's nothing abnormal about you, Olivia, Caleb said firmly. Your disability doesn't make you less. Never did. The conviction in his voice brought unexpected tears to Olivia's eyes. After months of diminishment, of being treated as a burden, his simple affirmation of her worth felt like rain on parched earth. It cracked something open in her, something long buried beneath the weight of Marcus's disdain. They continued this process for hours, Olivia recounting incidents, conversations, patterns of behavior. Caleb documented everything, that occasionally offering insights from his knowledge of abusive dynamics. He never flinched at the worst parts, never interrupted, only listened, as if holding space for every scar she revealed. By the time they heard a vehicle approaching the cabin, they had compiled a comprehensive timeline of Marcus's escalating control and abuse. That'll be Jack, Caleb said, standing. Let me go meet him. Olivia watched through the window as Caleb greeted two people. A tall, lean man with close-cropped hair, who moved with the same precise economy as Caleb, and a woman in her 40s with a sensible bob and an air of no-nonsense competence. Caleb led them inside, making introductions. Olivia, this is Jack Mercer, the friend I mentioned, and this is Rebecca Chen, an attorney specializing in domestic abuse cases. Jack Mercer had the weathered look of someone who'd seen hard things but hadn't lost his humanity in the process. He approached Olivia with a respectful nod, not offering a handshake until she extended her hand first. Miss Bennett, Caleb filled me in on the basics. I want you to know that what happened to you was criminal, and I'm here to help make sure there are consequences. His voice held none of the pity she had come to expect from strangers, only firm resolve. Rebecca Chen was more formal but equally direct. Miss Bennett, I've handled dozens of cases involving financial abuse and domestic violence against disabled partners. What you've experienced follows a pattern we can document and address legally. Her tone didn't invite sympathy, it commanded action. Olivia was struck by how neither of them questioned her story or expressed doubt. There was no pity in their assessments, just professional determination to address a wrong. I've brought some medical supplies, Jack said, indicating a duffel bag. Caleb mentioned you need prescription medication. I have contacts who can help with that, but I need to know exactly what you require. As Olivia provided details of her medication, Rebecca set up a laptop on the small dining table and began reviewing the notes Caleb had compiled. This is a good start, she said approvingly. But we need more. Bank statements, text message histories, email exchanges, anything that shows the pattern of control. She looked at Olivia directly. And we need to address the immediate issue. You've been reported missing, and police resources are being used to search for you. What do you suggest? Olivia asked, feeling overwhelmed by the complexity of the situation. We have two options, Rebecca explained. One, you contact the police immediately, report what actually happened, and file charges against your husband for attempted murder. Which would be my preference, Caleb muttered. Rebecca gave him a level look before continuing. Or two, we continue gathering evidence for another 24 hours while maintaining your missing status. Then approach the police with a comprehensive case. That's much harder for Marcus to dismiss. Won't staying missing make me look worse? Olivia asked. Like I'm really unstable or trying to punish him? Possibly, Rebecca acknowledged. But it also gives us time to secure evidence that might disappear once Marcus knows you're pursuing legal action. She paused. There's also a third option. We contact a specific detective I trust, explain the situation confidentially, and get their guidance on how to proceed. Jack nodded. I know who she's thinking of. Detective Morales. She specializes in domestic violence cases, has a solid understanding of disability issues too. Olivia considered her options, aware that whatever she decided would shape everything that followed. Part of her wanted to call the police immediately, to end the farce of being considered a missing person. But another part, the part that had suffered months of gaslighting and manipulation, feared that without solid evidence, Marcus would continue to control the narrative. I think we should contact Detective Morales, she decided finally. Get professional guidance before making our next move. Rebecca nodded approvingly. I'll make the call. In the meantime, she added, Jack can help us access your financial records and any digital evidence that might support your case. As Rebecca stepped outside to make her call, Jack set up sophisticated-looking equipment on the coffee table. Caleb said you have an old account your husband might not know about? He asked. Olivia nodded. A trust account for my parents. I never mentioned it to Marcus because we didn't need the money. Perfect, Jack said. Let's start there. If we can establish that account as legally yours alone, we can use it to fund your immediate needs without tipping Marcus off. While Jack worked on accessing Olivia's financial information, Caleb brought her a sandwich and more water. His attention to her comfort was unwavering. There was something both strange and comforting about seeing these three people, one from her past, two complete strangers, working so determinedly on her behalf. Caleb, she said quietly, when they had a moment alone. Why are they doing this? Why are you all helping me so intensely? Caleb considered her question seriously. For Jack, it's partly because he owes me, but mainly because he's built his post-military career around helping people who've been victimized. Rebecca takes cases like yours because she believes in justice. He paused. As for me, the door opened before he could finish. Rebecca returned, her expression purposeful. I spoke with Detective Morales. She wants to meet you, today preferably. She's willing to come here off the record to assess the situation before making anything official. Here? Olivia glanced around the cabin. Won't that compromise? I don't care about that, Caleb said firmly. What matters is your safety and building your case, Rebecca continued. Detective Morales suggested that staying missing for a bit longer might actually work in our favor. It gives Marcus more rope to hang himself with, so to speak. The more he fabricates about your mental state and disappearance, the more thoroughly we can disprove his narrative. When will she come? Olivia asked. Late afternoon, Rebecca replied, which gives us a few hours to gather as much evidence as possible. She turned to Jack. Any luck with the financial accounts? Jack looked up from his computer with a grim smile. Oh, I've got access, and what I'm seeing is textbook financial abuse. He turned the screen so Olivia could see. Your husband didn't just take control of your accounts, Olivia. He's been systematically draining them and moving assets into accounts only he can access. Olivia stared at the screen, a cold feeling settling in her stomach as she saw the evidence of Marcus's betrayal laid out in neat digital columns. He was planning this, she whispered. The abandonment? He was preparing for it. Financially, yes, Jack confirmed. Based on these transfers, he's been planning to get rid of you for at least 3 months. Caleb's expression darkened dangerously. The more I learn about your husband, the more I... Caleb, Rebecca cut in sharply. We're building a legal case here. Your personal feelings, however justified, aren't helpful right now. Caleb took a deep breath, visibly reining himself in. You're right. I apologize. Olivia was struck by the intensity of his reaction, by how personally he seemed to be taking Marcus's betrayal. It raised questions about his feelings that she wasn't ready to address, not with so much else happening. What about my business? She asked instead. Can we prove that Marcus essentially stole it from me? Jack nodded. The documents from your cloud storage help establish your ownership, and I'm finding emails where Marcus explicitly represented himself as you to clients. That's fraud. A growing sense of validation filled Olivia as tangible evidence of Marcus's crimes accumulated. For months, she had doubted herself, wondering if she was indeed becoming paranoid and unstable, as Marcus had suggested. Now, others were confirming what she had sensed but couldn't prove, that she had been the victim of calculated, systematic abuse. We should also document your physical condition, Rebecca suggested. The fact that you were abandoned without medication, without your wheelchair, in weather that could have led to hypothermia? That's attempted murder, regardless of his claims about your mental state. The afternoon continued in this vein, methodical gathering of evidence, preparation of documentation, and strategic planning. Through it all, Caleb remained a steady presence at Olivia's side, anticipating her needs, supporting her when painful memories surfaced. His quiet strength was a counterpoint to the clinical approach of Jack and Rebecca. By late afternoon, they had assembled a compelling case, financial records showing Marcus's systematic theft, email evidence of his fraudulent representation of himself as Olivia to her clients, text messages documenting his psychological manipulation, medical records confirming the severity of Olivia's condition and her dependence on regular medication. Piece by piece, the case against Marcus was no longer just a story. It was a damning portrait of calculated betrayal. As the sun began to set, a discreet knock at the door announced Detective Lisa Morales. She was a compact woman with intelligent eyes and an air of contained competence. She entered the cabin, taking in the scene with a quick, assessing gaze before focusing on Olivia. "Miss Bennett," she said, approaching with a professional but compassionate demeanor. "I understand you've been through a traumatic experience." Olivia nodded, suddenly emotional at being addressed by a law enforcement officer who wasn't immediately doubting her story. The simple acknowledgement of her trauma, without suspicion or skepticism, unraveled her composure more than she expected. "Thank you for coming, Detective," she managed. "And for keeping this unofficial, for now." "Call me Lisa," she replied, taking a seat across from Olivia. "Miss Chen briefed me on the basics, but I'd like to hear directly from you. What happened last night?" With as much composure as she could muster, Olivia recounted the events: Marcus driving her into the forest, his cold abandonment, Caleb's rescue. Lisa listened without interruption, her face revealing nothing, though her eyes hardened slightly as Olivia described being left without her wheelchair or medication. The officer's pen stilled for a moment at that detail, her jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "And you witnessed this, Mr. Jensen?" Lisa asked, turning to Caleb. Yes, Caleb confirmed. I followed their vehicle because I was concerned about Olivia's welfare. I observed Marcus Bennett deliberately abandoning his disabled wife in a remote location at night in cool weather with minimal supplies. He made statements clearly indicating he hoped she would not survive. Lisa nodded, making notes. And your relationship to Miss Bennett? We dated in college, Caleb replied simply. We hadn't been in contact for years, until yesterday. So you just happened to be following her car the night her husband decided to abandon her in the woods, near your cabin? Lisa's tone was neutral, but the question was pointed. It sounds improbable, I know, Caleb acknowledged. But I had legitimate concerns based on what I'd observed of Marcus's behavior. I can provide a detailed statement explaining my actions and observations. There was no defensiveness in his voice, only the calm certainty of a man who had once trusted his instincts to stay alive. Lisa turned back to Olivia. Miss Bennett, your husband has reported you missing. He's giving media interviews portraying himself as desperately worried. He's claiming you've been struggling with depression since your accident, that you've made comments about being a burden and wanting to end it all. Olivia felt sick. That's a complete fabrication. If anyone was depressed about my condition, it was Marcus. I believe you, Lisa said simply, and the evidence your team has gathered is compelling. The financial records alone suggest premeditation. She leaned forward. But I need to be clear about what you want to happen next. Do you want to pursue criminal charges against your husband for attempted murder, financial fraud, both? The question hung in the air, weighty with implication. Olivia considered it carefully, aware that her answer would set in motion events that couldn't be undone. I want justice, she said finally. I want him charged with everything he's done, the financial theft, the fraud, and yes, the attempted murder. But most importantly, I want to be safe, and I want my life back. Lisa nodded. Then here's what I propose, Lisa said. You remain missing until tomorrow morning. That gives us time to secure warrants based on the evidence you've provided. My team will execute those warrants at your home and Marcus's office simultaneously, securing additional evidence before he can destroy it. She paused. Then you appear, not at home, but at the police station, with me, ready to give a formal statement. That makes sense, Olivia agreed, though the thought of remaining officially missing for another night made her uncomfortable. What about her medication? Caleb asked. She has enough for tonight, but she needs her regular prescriptions. I can arrange that, Lisa assured him. I'll have an officer collect them from your pharmacy and deliver them here tonight, discreetly. They spent another hour reviewing details, with Lisa asking pointed questions about Marcus's behavior, his relationship with Brooke, and the events leading up to the abandonment. By the time she left, Olivia felt both exhausted and strangely empowered. For the first time since her accident, people in authority were taking her seriously, believing her account without question. As the door closed behind Detective Morales, Rebecca gave Olivia a small, satisfied smile. You did well. She's fully invested now. Will it be enough? Olivia asked. Will Marcus actually face consequences? The financial crimes are clear-cut, Jack said, shutting down his equipment. The attempted murder charge is harder to prove. But with Caleb's testimony and the evidence of premeditation from the financial records, there's a solid case. Rebecca nodded in agreement. And I'll be filing for emergency orders first thing tomorrow, freezing any remaining assets, securing your access to the house and business accounts, and a restraining order against Marcus. The professional efficiency with which they discussed dismantling her husband's schemes was both comforting and surreal. Just 24 hours ago, Olivia had been trapped in what she now recognized as an abusive marriage, her independence systematically stripped away. Now, she was at the center of a coordinated effort to reclaim her life and hold her abuser accountable. As Jack and Rebecca prepared to leave, promising to return in the morning to accompany Olivia to the police station, Caleb walked them out to their car. Through the window, Olivia could see them engaged in intense conversation, Rebecca occasionally glancing back toward the cabin with a concerned expression. When Caleb returned, his face was carefully composed, but Olivia sensed tension beneath the surface. What was that about? She asked. Caleb hesitated, then sighed. Rebecca is concerned about my involvement. In your case, she thinks my history with you and my reaction to what Marcus did might complicate the legal proceedings. Your reaction? Olivia asked. You mean saving my life? No, Caleb said, sitting across from her. She means the fact that I clearly want to do a lot more than just see Marcus arrested. His hands clenched briefly. I've been in war zones, Olivia. I've seen people do terrible things to each other. But what Marcus did to you, the calculated cruelty of it. He shook his head. Rebecca's worried I might take matters into my own hands if the legal system doesn't deliver justice. Olivia studied him, seeing the controlled anger in his posture, the protective intensity in his eyes. Would you? No, he said after a moment. Not because Marcus doesn't deserve it, but because it would hurt you more than help you. He met her gaze directly. I didn't find you, after all these years, just to leave you alone again by doing something stupid. The simple honesty of his statement touched something deep within Olivia. This man, who had once been the love of her young life, who had then become a stranger forged in war, was still somehow capable of putting her welfare above his own instincts for justice or revenge. Why did you come looking for me, Caleb? She asked again, returning to the question he hadn't fully answered earlier. The real reason. Caleb was quiet for a long moment, the crackling of the fire the only sound in the cabin. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and raw with honesty. When I got hurt on my last tour, it was bad. The kind of injury that makes you face your own mortality. I spent weeks in a hospital bed, not knowing if I'd walk again, not knowing what kind of life I'd have if I survived. He stared into the fire. During that time, I thought a lot about regrets, things left undone, words unsaid. He shifted his gaze to meet Olivia's. And you were there in those thoughts. Not just memories of our time together, but regrets about how we ended. Questions about what might have been, if I'd made different choices. We both made our choices, Olivia said softly. I chose stability over uncertainty. You chose service over comfort. Yes, Caleb acknowledged, and those weren't wrong choices, but nearly dying has a way of reshuffling your priorities. He leaned forward. When I recovered enough to leave the hospital, I made a list of things I needed to do with my second chance at life. Finding you was on that list. Not to disrupt your life or reignite the past, but just to see you. To know you were well. To apologize for how abruptly I cut things off when you ended our relationship. Olivia remembered their final conversation, her tearful explanation that she couldn't commit to a life waiting for him to return from dangerous deployments. His stoic acceptance that had hardened into distance within minutes, the coldness with which he'd walked away. You were hurt, Olivia said. We both were. I was young and proud, Caleb corrected. Too proud to admit how much losing you affected me. He shook his head. Anyway, I came back to Portland, started looking you up, discovered you were married. I told myself I would just send an email, make peace with the past, and move on. But then you found out about my accident. Yes, and the more I looked into your situation, the more wrong things seemed. His expression darkened. I've spent years in environments where recognizing danger can mean the difference between life and death. Something about your isolation, about Marcus's public portrayal of your marriage versus the complete absence of your own voice. It set off alarms. There was something about the silence between the smiling pictures, something hollow beneath the perfection. It didn't feel right. So you decided to investigate? Olivia asked, both touched and slightly unsettled by the revelation. Not formally, but I did drive by your house a few times, hoping to catch a glimpse of you, maybe find a way to reach out directly, rather than through Marcus. Caleb's voice tightened. Yesterday was the first time I saw you. The way he handled you, the clinical detachment, the subtle signs of coercion. I couldn't just drive away. His hands clenched slightly as he spoke, as though remembering how hard it had been to stay silent, to stay hidden, when every instinct told him to intervene. Olivia absorbed this information, trying to reconcile the young man she'd once loved with this vigilant protector who had sensed danger and acted when others hadn't. Thank you, she said finally, for not driving away, for trusting your instincts. She reached for his hand, squeezing it gently, and for not giving up on me, even after all these years. Caleb's fingers curled around hers, warm and steady. I should have found you sooner. Maybe if I had. Don't, Olivia interrupted. We can't change the past. All we can do is move forward. She held his gaze. And right now, moving forward means focusing on tomorrow, on making Marcus face consequences, and reclaiming my life. Caleb nodded, though she could see the regret still lingering in his eyes. You're right, one step at a time. They sat in companionable silence for a while, hands still linked, the fire casting warm light across their faces. Despite the chaos and uncertainty of her situation, Olivia felt a strange peace in this moment. A sense that whatever happened next, she was no longer facing it alone. I should make dinner, Caleb said eventually, reluctantly releasing her hand. You need to keep your strength up for tomorrow. As he moved around the small kitchen, Olivia watched him, struck by the strange twist of fate that had brought them back to each other's lives under such extreme circumstances. There was something profoundly healing in the simplicity of his gestures, something she hadn't realized she'd been starving for. The boy she'd loved had become a man shaped by war and pain, yet somehow still capable of remarkable gentleness. The girl she'd been had become a woman shaped by disability and betrayal, yet finding herself capable of more strength than she'd realized. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, formal statements, legal proceedings, media attention, perhaps. The path to justice and recovery would be neither quick nor easy. But for tonight, in this quiet cabin, with the person who had quite literally carried her from darkness into light, Olivia allowed herself to feel something she had almost forgotten: hope. The next morning dawned clear and cold, a fitting backdrop for what Olivia knew would be one of the most challenging days of her life. She woke early, her mind already racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. The formal police statement, the potential confrontation with Marcus, the public revelation of his betrayal. Caleb was already up, as she'd expected, from her place on the bed. Olivia could hear him moving quietly around the cabin, his footsteps deliberate and measured, the occasional clink of a mug or rustle of paper, the only sounds breaking the morning silence. When she called his name, Caleb appeared in the doorway almost immediately, freshly showered and dressed in clothes more formal than his usual cabin attire. Dark jeans and a button-down shirt suggested he was preparing for their trip to the police station. "You're awake," he said, his voice gentle. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected," Olivia admitted. It was true. Despite the enormity of what awaited her, she had slept deeply, perhaps the result of emotional exhaustion, or the sense of security Caleb's presence provided. Detective Morales called, Caleb informed her, helping her sit up and arranging pillows behind her back. "The warrants were approved early this morning. Her team is preparing to execute them at your house and Marcus's office at 9. Olivia glanced at the clock. 7:30 a.m. In 90 minutes, Marcus's carefully constructed world would begin to crumble. The thought brought a complex mix of emotions: vindication, anxiety, and a lingering shadow of grief for what her marriage had become. "Jack and Rebecca will be here by 8:30 to take us to the police station," Caleb continued. "I've made coffee and breakfast." He hesitated. "And I thought you might want something different to wear for your statement." He gestured to a neatly folded stack of clothes on the dresser, a simple blue sweater and black pants that Olivia recognized as her own. "How did you get my clothes?" she asked, surprised. "Detective Morales brought them last night with your medication. She thought you might want familiar clothes for today." Caleb's expression softened. "She's good at her job, Olivia. She understands the details matter." The thoughtfulness of the gesture, both from Detective Morales and from Caleb for arranging it, touched Olivia deeply. After so many months of having her needs ignored or minimized by Marcus, this simple act of consideration felt profound. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything, Caleb. I don't know how I would have gotten through this without you." Caleb's expression grew serious. "You would have found a way, Olivia. You're stronger than you realize." He paused. "But I'm glad I could be here, now. Let's get you ready for the day ahead." With practiced efficiency that never crossed the line into impersonal clinical handling, Caleb helped Olivia to the bathroom, then to the kitchen table where breakfast awaited. Scrambled eggs, toast, and fresh fruit. "Eat," he encouraged. "You'll need your strength today." As they ate, Caleb outlined what Detective Morales had shared about the plan. The police will search your house and Marcus's office simultaneously to prevent him from destroying evidence at either location, Caleb explained. You'll give your formal statement at the station with Rebecca present as your attorney. Once the statement is recorded, Detective Morales will personally arrest Marcus on multiple charges: attempted murder, financial fraud, domestic abuse, and possibly more, depending on what they find during the searches. Olivia nodded, trying to prepare herself mentally for each step. Will I have to see him today? I mean, in person? No, Caleb assured her. Detective Morales was very clear about that. You'll be kept completely separate from him. Your safety is the priority. Relief washed over Olivia. She knew she would eventually have to face Marcus in court, but the thought of seeing him today, while the wound of his betrayal was still so raw, had been weighing heavily on her. What about Brooke? She asked, remembering the woman who had smirked as Marcus pushed her into the forest. Detective Morales mentioned she'll be brought in for questioning as well, Caleb replied. Depending on her level of involvement and knowledge of Marcus's plans, she could face charges as an accessory. The sound of vehicles approaching interrupted their conversation. Through the window, Olivia could see Jack's SUV and another unfamiliar car pulling up outside the cabin. That's our ride, Caleb said, helping Olivia into her wheelchair. Ready? He asked. Olivia took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. Ready. Rebecca and Jack entered, accompanied by a woman Olivia hadn't met before, tall, with cropped silver hair and an air of quiet authority. Olivia, this is Sarah Dawson, Rebecca introduced her. She's a victim's advocate with the district attorney's office. She'll be with you throughout the legal process, making sure your rights are protected and your needs are addressed. Sarah approached Olivia with a warm, professional smile. Miss Bennett, I'm here to support you today, and in the weeks ahead. Whatever you need, explanations of legal procedures, accommodations for your disability, emotional support, that's what I'm here for. The thoroughness of the team Rebecca had assembled was both impressive and somewhat overwhelming. Olivia had gone from being isolated and controlled to having 4 professionals dedicated to helping her secure justice. Thank you all, she said, emotion thick in her voice. I don't know what to say, except thank you. Save your thanks for when Marcus is behind bars, Jack said with grim satisfaction. We should get moving. Traffic will be heavy this time of morning. As they prepared to leave, Caleb knelt beside Olivia's wheelchair, his expression intensely serious. I'll be with you the whole time, he promised. But I need you to know something. He hesitated. The media has picked up the story of your disappearance. Marcus has been giving interviews, playing the part of the desperate husband. Once you reappear, and the truth comes out, there will be significant attention. Olivia hadn't considered the media angle. But, of course, Marcus would have used every tool available to control the narrative. The thought of reporters, cameras, and public scrutiny made her stomach clench with anxiety. Images of flashing bulbs and pointed microphones invaded her mind, each one a reminder that her pain might soon be public property. I don't know if I can handle that, she admitted, being some kind of public spectacle. You don't have to, Sarah interjected gently. The police station has private entrances we can use, and you have every right to decline interviews or public statements. Your focus should be on your case and your recovery, not managing public perception. Caleb nodded in agreement. Sarah's right, and for whatever it's worth, I think the truth speaks for itself in this case. You don't need to justify or explain yourself to anyone. His words wrapped around her like a shield, easing the tightness in her chest. Fortified by their support, Olivia allowed herself to be helped into Jack's specially equipped SUV, which had been modified to accommodate her wheelchair. Caleb sat beside her in the back seat, a steady presence, as they drove toward Portland and the confrontation that awaited. The journey passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. Rebecca briefed Olivia on what to expect during her formal statement, emphasizing the importance of being detailed, chronological, and factual. Sarah provided reassurance about the process, explaining how the district attorney's office would handle the case moving forward. Through it all, Caleb remained quiet but alert, his hand occasionally covering Olivia's when her anxiety became visible. Every time her fingers twitched with nervous energy, his touch reminded her she wasn't facing this storm alone. As they approached the city, Olivia's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. The car fell silent as everyone noticed. Olivia stared at the phone, her heart pounding. Each ring echoed like a countdown to another battle. "You don't have to answer," Rebecca said carefully. "But if you did, on speaker, with us as witnesses." Olivia understood immediately. This could be an opportunity to gather more evidence, perhaps even a confession from an increasingly desperate Marcus. The thought of hearing his voice made her stomach turn, but she also knew that fear couldn't steer her now. With trembling fingers, she answered the call, immediately pressing the speaker button. "Olivia?" Marcus's voice filled the car, a strange mixture of relief and weariness. "Olivia, is that you?" "Yes," she replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "It's me. Thank God." He exhaled dramatically. "Where are you? I've been out of my mind with worry. The police are searching everywhere." The performance was so convincing that for a split second, Olivia almost doubted her own memory of events. Then she glanced at Caleb, saw the cold fury in his eyes as he listened to Marcus's lies, and her resolve strengthened. "I'm safe," she said simply. "Safe." "Olivia, you've been missing for 2 days. What happened? Where did you go?" Marcus's voice rose with what sounded like genuine concern. "You know exactly what happened, Marcus," Olivia replied, her voice gaining strength. "You drove me into the forest and left me there to die." A pause. Then Marcus's tone changed, becoming softer, more patronizing. "Olivia, sweetheart, that's not what happened." "You're confused," Marcus said smoothly. "We went for a drive, yes, but then you got upset, said you needed space. I left to give you time to calm down, and when I came back, you were gone." Rebecca nodded encouragingly at Olivia, signaling her to keep him talking. "That's not true," Olivia said firmly. Her voice trembled at first, but steadied with every word. "You told me I was a burden. You left me without my wheelchair, knowing I couldn't possibly get help on my own. You wanted me to die out there." "Olivia, listen to yourself," Marcus said, his voice now tinged with exasperation. "This is exactly what I've been telling the police. Your emotional state has been extremely fragile lately. You've been having these paranoid thoughts, twisting reality." His voice softened, falsely gentle. "You need help, sweetheart. Professional help. Come home, and we'll get you the best care." The words, soaked in artificial sympathy, dripped like venom into Olivia's ear. It was the same voice that had once convinced her she was broken, unstable, unworthy of control over her own life. "The only help I need is a good lawyer," Olivia replied, drawing strength from the supportive presence of those around her, which, fortunately, I now have. Another pause, longer this time. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had changed completely, colder, more calculating. "Who's with you, Olivia? Who are you talking to?" "People who believe me," she answered simply. "People who aren't trying to gaslight me or steal from me or leave me to die in the woods." "You're making a serious mistake," Marcus said, all pretense of concern dropping away. His voice sharpened into a hiss, the edge of a threat lurking beneath the words. "Whatever you think you're doing, whatever you think you know, you won't win this. You're a disabled woman with documented emotional issues, and I have the best lawyers in Portland." Caleb's hand tightened around Olivia's, but he remained silent, letting her handle the conversation. "You're right about one thing, Marcus," Olivia said, surprising herself with the steady confidence in her voice. "I am disabled, but that doesn't make me powerless, and it doesn't make me a liar." She paused. The moment was thick with clarity. No more pretending, no more fear. "The police are executing search warrants at our house and your office right now. They'll find everything, the financial records, the fraudulent emails, evidence of your affair with Brooke." "That's impossible," Marcus snapped, but she could hear the first tremor of uncertainty in his voice. "There are no warrants." "I would have been notified." "Check your messages," Olivia suggested, knowing from Detective Morales that officers would already be at both locations. "I have to go now. I'm on my way to give my statement about what really happened in the forest." "Olivia, wait." Marcus's voice had lost its confident edge, replaced by something closer to panic. "We can talk about this. Whatever you think I've done, we can work it out. There's no need for police or lawyers." "There's every need," Olivia replied. "Goodbye, Marcus." She ended the call, her hand shaking slightly, but her resolve stronger than ever. Around her the car was silent for a moment. Then Jack let out a low whistle. "That," he said. Admiringly, "that was textbook," Jack said. "You just got him to essentially admit that he knows exactly what happened in the forest, contrary to the story he's been telling the police and media." Rebecca was already making notes. The shift in his tone when he realized you had legal representation was particularly telling, and the implied threat about his lawyers versus your credibility as a disabled woman, that won't play well in court. Olivia leaned back in her seat, emotionally drained, but also experiencing a strange, fierce satisfaction. For the first time in a very long time, she had confronted Marcus's manipulation directly and emerged with her truth intact. Caleb's hand still covered hers, his thumb moving in small, comforting circles. "You were magnificent," he said quietly, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and protectiveness. "Absolutely magnificent." The remainder of the drive passed in focused discussion as Rebecca and Sarah refined their strategy based on Marcus's revealing phone call. By the time they arrived at the police station, using a private entrance as promised, Olivia felt prepared for what lay ahead. Not just the formal statement, but the beginning of a process that would ultimately lead to justice. Detective Morales met them in a conference room, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes conveying quiet satisfaction. "The search warrants are being executed as we speak," she informed them. "My team at your house has already found financial documents hidden in your husband's home office, records of accounts you knew nothing about, transfers of your business assets into his name." She paused. "They've also found emails between Marcus and Brooke, dating back months, discussing their relationship and, more importantly, discussing their plans for your future." "What kind of plans?" Olivia asked, a chill running through her despite the warmth of the room. Lisa's expression tightened. "Let's just say the forest wasn't their first idea. There were other scenarios they considered, less spontaneous ones." Caleb's posture stiffened beside Olivia, and she could sense the carefully controlled anger radiating from him. "You're saying they were planning to kill me?" Olivia clarified, needing to hear the words directly. "It appears they considered several options," Lisa confirmed. "The emails are somewhat coded, but clear enough to experts. Insurance policies, accidents, the potential legal ramifications of different scenarios." She met Olivia's eyes directly. "What happened in the forest wasn't an impulsive act, Miss Bennett. It was the culmination of months of planning." The revelation hit Olivia with physical force. She had known Marcus had changed, had become cruel and controlling, but the calculated nature of his betrayal, the deliberate plotting of her death, was beyond what she had imagined. "I need to step out for a moment," Caleb said suddenly, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "Excuse me." Left the room. Rebecca moved closer to Olivia, a silent offering of support. "This is difficult information to process," she acknowledged, "but it actually strengthens our case considerably." Olivia nodded, trying to focus on the legal implications rather than the personal devastation of learning just how thoroughly her husband had betrayed her. Detective Morales placed a folder on the table. "I need to take your formal statement now, Olivia. We'll go through everything chronologically, your relationship with Marcus, when things began to change, the financial irregularities you noticed, and then what happened in the forest. Take your time, be as detailed as possible." As Olivia prepared to begin her statement, Caleb returned to the room, his composure restored, though his eyes still carried a shadow of barely contained fury. He took his seat beside Olivia, his quiet "I'm here" providing the anchor she needed. For the next hour, Olivia methodically recounted her story. Her marriage to Marcus, the accident that had left her disabled, how Marcus's behavior had gradually changed from supportive to controlling, his isolation of her from friends and family, the gaslighting, and finally, the abandonment in the forest. "And if Caleb hadn't found me," she concluded, her voice steady despite the emotion behind her words, "I have no doubt that Marcus intended for me to die there." Detective Morales nodded gravely as she finished taking notes. "Thank you, Olivia. Your statement aligns with the evidence we've already gathered. We'll be arresting Marcus Bennett within the hour." "What happens after that?" Olivia asked. "He'll be processed, charged, and arraigned," Sarah explained. Given the severity of the charges and the evidence of premeditation, the prosecutor will request he be held without bail, Rebecca added. Meanwhile, we'll file for emergency protective orders, freezing your joint assets to prevent Marcus from liquidating anything and securing your home and business interests. Olivia felt a wave of exhaustion, the weight of everything she'd been through finally settling on her shoulders. Caleb noticed immediately. "I think Olivia needs a break," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Is there somewhere quiet she can rest for a while?" Detective Morales nodded. "There's a comfortable witness room down the hall. I'll have someone bring you water and something to eat." As they settled into the quieter room, Caleb pulled his chair close to Olivia's wheelchair. "You're doing incredibly well," he said softly. "But don't push yourself too hard. This is a marathon, not a sprint." Olivia leaned back, closing her eyes briefly. "Do you know what's strangest about all this? Part of me still can't believe Marcus would do this. After 10 years together." "That's not strange at all," Caleb replied. "The Marcus you married and the man who left you in that forest, they're different people in your mind. And rightfully so." "When did you know?" Olivia asked suddenly, opening her eyes to look directly at Caleb. "When did you realize? He changed?" Olivia asked. Caleb's expression grew solemn. "The last time I saw you both together, about a year ago, the way he spoke over you, dismissed your ideas about the business." He paused. "But I never imagined it would go this far. I should have stayed in touch. Should have checked on you more." "You're here now," Olivia said simply. "That's what matters." Their moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. Detective Morales entered, her expression professionally composed, but with an unmistakable light of satisfaction in her eyes. "Marcus Bennett is in custody," she announced. "And there's something else you should know. When our officers arrived at his office, he was in the process of transferring large sums from your joint business accounts to an offshore account. This makes our financial fraud case even stronger." Olivia felt a complex wave of emotions: relief, vindication, and a deep sadness for the death of what she had once believed was a loving marriage. "What about Brooke?" she asked. "Also in custody. She was with Marcus at his office, and her response to the arrest was illuminating. She immediately attempted to distance herself, claiming she had no knowledge of his plans, but the emails we found contradict that." Caleb's hand found Olivia's, offering silent support as Detective Morales continued. "I want you to be prepared. This will hit the news cycle soon. Marcus has been quite visible in his search for you, giving tearful interviews. The revelation that he was actually the perpetrator will draw significant media attention." Olivia nodded, steeling herself for what was to come. "I understand. My team is preparing a statement that communicates the facts without compromising the case," Detective Morales assured her. "You won't need to speak to the press." Before they could discuss further, Rebecca burst into the room, her normally composed demeanor animated with urgency. "We have a problem," she announced. "Marcus's attorney is Carter Blackwell." "The former district attorney?" Detective Morales asked, her expression darkening. "The same," Rebecca confirmed. "He's already making noise about insufficient evidence and claiming that Olivia's disability affects her mental capacity to give reliable testimony." Olivia felt a chill run through her. Carter Blackwell was notorious in Portland legal circles, ruthless, well-connected, and known for getting high-profile clients acquitted through aggressive and often questionable tactics. "He's trying to set the stage for a mental competency challenge," Rebecca explained to Olivia, "suggesting that your trauma from the accident has affected your perception of reality." Caleb's posture stiffened. "That's absurd. Olivia's disability is physical, not cognitive. It's a tactic, not reality," Rebecca assured them. "But we need to be prepared for an ugly fight. Blackwell will try to paint Marcus as the devoted husband dealing with a mentally unstable wife. And Brooke as an innocent friend who was trying to help," Rebecca concluded grimly. Olivia straightened in her wheelchair, a resolve hardening within her. "Let him try," she said, her voice steady. "We have the evidence, we have the truth, and I refuse to be portrayed as a helpless, confused victim." Rebecca's expression shifted to one of admiration. "That's exactly the attitude we need." In fact, she hesitated, considering. "What would you think about making a brief, controlled statement?" Not to the media directly, but a recorded statement that we release on our terms. You want to counter their narrative before they can establish it, Caleb observed. Precisely, Rebecca nodded. A short, dignified statement from Olivia, clear-eyed, articulate, resolute, would make it much harder for Blackwell to sell his confused, unstable wife's story. Olivia considered the suggestion. The thought of putting herself in the public eye was daunting, but the alternative, allowing Marcus and his attorney to control the narrative, was worse. I'll do it, she decided, but I want to keep it factual and dignified. No emotional appeals or accusations that could seem like I'm seeking sympathy. Detective Morales nodded approvingly. That's the right approach. We can set up the recording here. Controlled environment, professional, but not institutional-looking background. As they prepared for the recording, Caleb helped Olivia freshen up, his movements gentle as he brushed her hair and helped her adjust her clothing. You don't have to do this, he reminded her quietly. I know, Olivia replied, but I want to. For too long, Marcus has been speaking for me, making decisions for me, telling the world who I am. It's time for me to reclaim my voice. When everything was ready, Olivia sat before the camera, her posture straight, her expression composed. Rebecca stood behind the camera, giving a silent countdown before nodding for her to begin. My name is Olivia Bennett, she began, her voice clear and steady. 3 days ago, my husband, Marcus Bennett, drove me to a remote forest location and abandoned me there, without my wheelchair or any means of seeking help. This was not the result of confusion or misunderstanding on my part. It was a deliberate act, one that followed months of financial exploitation and emotional abuse. She paused, taking a measured breath before continuing. I am disabled following a car accident 2 years ago. This has limited my physical mobility, but not my mental capacity or my ability to recognize betrayal. I am cooperating fully with the authorities, who have gathered substantial evidence supporting my account of events. Olivia's gaze remained direct, her voice unwavering. I am deeply grateful to those who have helped bring the truth to light, and I have faith in our justice system to address this matter appropriately. I will not be making further public statements at this time and ask for privacy as the legal process moves forward. Thank you. As the recording ended, the room remained silent for a moment. The power of Olivia's dignified testimony hung in the air. Perfect, Rebecca said finally. Absolutely perfect. Detective Morales nodded in agreement. Clear, concise, and impossible to dismiss as the words of someone confused or unstable. We'll release this through official channels this evening. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of legal preparations. Rebecca filed emergency motions to protect Olivia's assets and business interests. Detective Morales provided updates on the investigation, as her team uncovered more evidence from Marcus's office and their home. By evening, exhaustion had set in. Caleb drove Olivia back to his cabin, the forest that had nearly been her grave now, ironically, becoming her sanctuary from the media storm that erupted following Marcus's arrest. The statement has been released, Rebecca informed them over the phone. Initial public reaction is overwhelmingly supportive. Blackwell tried to counter with a press conference, but he came across as desperate and defensive. Olivia listened to the update with a strange sense of detachment. The events of the day, Marcus's arrest, the revelation of his extensive plotting, her public statement, all felt almost surreal. As Caleb prepared a simple dinner, Olivia wheeled herself to the cabin's wide window, gazing out at the darkening forest. The same trees that had witnessed her abandonment were now standing sentinel over her recovery and growing determination. There was something poetically just about that, she thought. Penny for your thoughts? Caleb asked, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. I was just thinking about cycles, Olivia replied. How the forest that was meant to be my end has become my beginning instead. Caleb knelt beside her wheelchair, his eyes meeting hers. This is just the first step, Olivia. The legal battle ahead won't be easy. I know, she acknowledged, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm fighting for something, not just surviving. There's a difference. As they shared the quiet meal, discussing strategy for the days ahead, Olivia realized that through the trauma and betrayal, she had found something she thought lost forever, her own strength, and people who valued her exactly as she was. The sun set over the forest, drawing Act 4 to a close, as a new chapter in Olivia's life began to take shape. One built not on dependency and manipulation, but on justice, truth, and the possibility of healing. 6 months later, Olivia sat in the courtroom, her wheelchair positioned at the end of the front row. Caleb was a steady presence beside her. The journey to this moment had been arduous. Depositions, hearings, motions, and counter-motions as Marcus's attorney employed every tactic to delay and derail the proceedings. But now, finally, the jury was returning with their verdict. The past month had transformed Olivia in ways both subtle and profound. The frightened, isolated woman abandoned in the forest was gone, replaced by someone more resilient, more determined, and perhaps most importantly, surrounded by a network of support. She had rebuilt, piece by piece. Her therapist, Dr. Patel, had helped her understand the patterns of Marcus's abuse and her own responses to it. Rebecca had become not just her attorney, but a friend and advocate. And Caleb had been her constant, never pushing, always supporting. His feelings for her were evident, but respectfully restrained as she worked through her trauma. The courtroom fell silent as the jury filed in. Olivia's hand sought Caleb's, drawing strength from his quiet confidence. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Watkins asked. The foreperson, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, stood. "We have, Your Honor." Olivia held her breath as the charges were read. Attempted murder, financial fraud, domestic abuse, conspiracy to commit murder. On count after count, the word guilty rang through the courtroom. Marcus, seated at the defense table, remained stone-faced, his shoulders rigid with tension. Beside him, Carter Blackwell scribbled notes furiously, already planning appeals. When the final guilty verdict was announced, a soft exhale escaped Olivia's lips. Not triumph, but relief. Relief that the truth had been heard and acknowledged, that justice, imperfect though it might be, had been served. Judge Watkins scheduled sentencing for the following month, then addressed the courtroom. "I want to thank the jury for their service in this difficult case. Court is adjourned." As the room began to clear, Olivia remained seated, processing the moment. Marcus was led away in handcuffs, pausing briefly to glance in her direction. Their eyes met across the courtroom. No words exchanged, none needed. In his gaze, Olivia saw not remorse, but a cold calculation. Even now, he was measuring his chances of eventual appeal. Outside the courthouse, Rebecca fielded questions from the press, while Olivia and Caleb slipped out a side entrance, avoiding the media frenzy. "How are you feeling?" Caleb asked as they drove away from the courthouse. "Honestly, I'm not sure," Olivia replied. "I thought I'd feel victorious, or vindicated, but mostly, I feel free, like I can finally stop looking over my shoulder and start looking forward." Caleb nodded, understanding. "That makes perfect sense. This wasn't about winning for you. It was about reclaiming your life." "Exactly," Olivia confirmed. "And speaking of reclaiming my life, I have something to show you." When they arrived at their destination, a small commercial building in a quiet part of Portland, Olivia asked Caleb to help her from the car, declining her wheelchair. "I want to do this on my own," she explained, accepting only his arm for balance as she carefully navigated the short distance to the building's entrance using her cane. The physical therapy she'd committed to over the past months had yielded modest but meaningful improvements in her mobility. While she still relied on her wheelchair for longer distances, she had gradually regained the ability to walk short stretches with support. "What is this place?" Caleb asked as Olivia unlocked the door. "The future," Olivia replied with a smile, leading him inside. The interior was a work in progress, walls freshly painted, furniture still covered in protective plastic, computers waiting to be set up. But the sign above the reception desk was finished and proudly displayed. "Phoenix Accessibility Consulting. My new business," Olivia explained, her face alight with purpose. "We provide consulting services to businesses trying to improve accessibility, not just physical accommodations, but inclusive hiring practices, adaptive technologies, the whole spectrum." Caleb looked around the space, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You're turning your experience into a way to help others." "That's the plan," Olivia confirmed. "I've already hired 2 consultants, one with visual impairment, another with hearing loss. We start taking clients next month." Pride filled Caleb's expression. "Olivia, this is incredible, truly. I couldn't have done it without you, she acknowledged. Your support, your belief in me when I couldn't believe in myself. You did the hard work? Caleb countered. I just had the privilege of witnessing it. They toured the small office space, Olivia explaining her vision with growing animation. The business represented more than just professional rebirth. It was her declaration of independence, her refusal to be defined by what had been done to her. There's something else I wanted to discuss with you, Olivia said, as they finished the tour, her tone growing more serious. The cabin, Caleb's cabin in the forest, had become her sanctuary during the trial. A place removed from media scrutiny and painful memories of the home she had shared with Marcus. But now, with the trial concluded, decisions needed to be made. I've been thinking about looking for my own place, Olivia continued, watching Caleb's face carefully. Somewhere in the city, closer to the new office. A flicker of disappointment crossed Caleb's features before he composed himself. Of course, that makes sense, with your new business. But, Olivia added, her voice softening, I've also been thinking about us, what we've become to each other these past months. Caleb met her gaze, allowing himself for the first time to openly show the depth of his feelings. Olivia, I would never presume. I know, she interrupted gently. You've been incredibly respectful of my space and my healing process. But I'm ready now, Caleb. Ready to explore what we might be together, beyond crisis and courtrooms. The hope that bloomed in Caleb's eyes matched the lightness Olivia felt in her own heart. The tentative joy of new beginnings, built on mutual respect and genuine care. I was thinking, she continued, maybe we could find a place together, somewhere that isn't shadowed by either of our pasts, not the forest, not my old house, somewhere new. Caleb's smile was radiant. I'd like that, very much. Their moment was interrupted by Olivia's phone ringing. Rebecca, with news about the civil case against Brooke. She had received a more lenient sentence in exchange for testimony against Marcus, but still faced significant financial penalties. As Olivia handled the call, Caleb moved to the large window overlooking the street, giving her privacy. He watched her, confident, engaged, directing her attorney with clear purpose. He marveled at the transformation she had undergone. When she finished the call, Caleb offered his hand. Ready to go celebrate the verdict and your new venture? Olivia accepted his hand, using it for balance as she rose carefully from her seat. Actually, I think I'd like to stay here a while longer, she said. Just sit in this space and absorb the reality of it all. Understanding perfectly, Caleb pulled 2 chairs together by the window. They sat side by side in companionable silence, watching the afternoon light shift across the room that represented Olivia's future. You know, Olivia said after a time, when Marcus left me in that forest, he thought he was ending my story. But he was really just setting me free to write a new one. Caleb's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. And what does this new story look like, Olivia? Her gaze swept across her newly launched business, then returned to meet Caleb's eyes. It looks like purpose, she said. It looks like justice. Not just for me, but hopefully for others through this work. And she added softly, squeezing his hand, it looks like love, the real kind, built on truth and respect. As the sun began to set outside, casting a golden glow across the room, they remained together in that moment of possibility. 2 people who had found each other through darkness, but were now stepping together into the light of a future neither could have imagined 6 months before. In the distance, the courthouse stood, a reminder of justice served. Beyond it, the forest, where Olivia's journey of reclamation had begun. And here, in this sunlit room, the promise of tomorrow stretched before them. Not perfect, not without challenges, but authentically theirs to shape together. Dear friend, sometimes life breaks us in places we never thought we could be broken. But as the Stoics teach us, it's not the suffering that defines us, it's how we respond to it. Olivia's story is not just about survival, but about transformation. She turned betrayal into strength, pain into purpose, and found love, not in grand declarations, but in steady hands and quiet faith. We don't get to choose every chapter life writes for us, but we always get to choose how we end the story. And maybe, like Olivia, your new beginning starts where something else had to end. If this story moved you even a little, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps bring more voices, more healing, and more hope into the light.